fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hi folks, John Cordisco from Cordisco's Chess Center in Binghamton, New York, in upstate New York, with another video here for you. This is a game that I played at the U.S. Amateur Team Championship last year in Parsippany, New Jersey in 2012. I did a video on it already, but some people like a live video, so I'm going to do a live video on it as well as a computer board video. This is a game I'm pretty proud of. I was about 300 points lower than my opponent. And to give you some background, I'm on board 4, which is the lowest board, and a 4-man team. And you'll see as I explain as we go on, this game was incredibly important for us. It tied us for first place in our section. I believe we were in the under 1800 or 1900 section. And let me get right to it, and I'll talk about a little bit more about the circumstances. I had white. My opponent, who was 300 points higher rated than I, had black. And I went e4. My opponent went c5. I'm going to breeze through some of the opening moves pretty quick here, save on some time. Went knight to f3. My opponent went knight to c6. Sorry about that. And I went c4. I got tired of the normal Sicilians all the time, and being this guy was such a high-rated player, I figured his opening knowledge was much greater than mine. So I decided to do somewhat of a Maroczy bind setup with c4. He went d6. I went bishop to e2, just developing. He went g6. I went knight to c3. He went bishop to g7. I castled. e6. So we'll go in there. I was a little surprised at that move. I thought my opponent would bring out his light square bishop first, maybe to here just to get it out. But I see with a fiat-kettled bishop here, the bishop would have no place to go, so really didn't have much choice. I went queen to c2, and he went a6. Pawns don't want to go in today. He went a6. I'm assuming he was trying to stop my knight from coming here, or he had some thoughts of some queenside expansion. I went a3. I didn't want his knight coming in. He went knight g to e7. I went d3, reinforcing my center pawns and making an escape route for my dark squared bishop. My opponent castled, and I went bishop f4. Get my bishop right out in the fight. This is going to be a big fight here in the center. He went h6, and I moved my queen again. This time to d2. My thoughts were the queen bishop battery hitting his pawn here would be tough to handle. He went king to h7. Now, in my opinion, I think that just loses the tempo. Rook a to b1. In case he advances, I can advance. I've got some play here with this dark squared bishop coming down, and I'm going to leave this pawn undefended in case I had to move my queen. He went knight to d4. I moved my bishop back to d1. Seems like an odd move, but at the time it was funny. I remember thinking, I'm going to need that light squared bishop. It's just intuition, you don't know why. And you're going to see later that this light square bishop ends up being a big hero for me. He basically wins the game. He went knight at e to c6. I played knight takes d4. And he played c takes. Now I was wondering why he didn't play knight takes, but if he's got thinking of moving up his pawn here and forcing my bishop with the pawn storm. So I think the reason why he took with a pawn instead of the knight. I went knight to e2, hitting his pawn. He went e5, of course, protecting his pawn and hitting my dark squared bishop. Bishop to g3, backing my bishop up, and he went f5. Now I remember thinking at the time, oh boy, here we go. My team's depending on me. I've got to at least draw this, especially with white. What do? My bishop's going to get cornered here. I'm in a lot of trouble. I can move my h-pawn, leave an escape square. I can move my f-pawn for an escape square for the bishop. He's just going to push up here. He's got me in a bind. I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. And I went f4. I said, let's go, let's go. If we're going to open it up, let's open it up. My queen's here, my bishop's here, my knight's in play. I've got a lot more pieces in the board than he does. As you can see, he's got two of his pieces are developed. My one rook is developed, and this rook is developed. He played f takes. And I played d takes. Now I thought for sure he would play pawn takes, but he didn't. He went bishop to e6. He's probably thinking I need to get my pieces out, and also he hits my undefended pawn here. I went b3 to defend my pawn. He went queen to b6. Now it's interesting. He's hitting my pawn again, and it looks like he might have some play on the queen side. But that queen to b6 move, you'll see later, ends up cutting his queen off from the defense of his king. And you're going to see later that plays a huge role in what happens. Also, what he's trying to do is he's trying to push this pawn and have a discovered check in my king. I could move the bishop the block, and he would move, but it would be a pain in the behind, and I really didn't want to do that. So I went push queen to d3, supporting these two pawns and my center pawn, stopping the advance of the black pawn, and also later maybe getting my queen out on this side of the board. Now my bishop can move around. He went knight to e7. It looks like he's going to be bringing his knight into the queen side. I went bishop c2. I saw this bishop-queen battery on a leg square on his king. Now that this pawn is not locked permanently anymore, I'm going to leave this tension right here on the board. That way if he ever takes and I retake, this pawn can move, exposing his king side. He went rook to f7. Looks like he's going to double up his rooks. I went bishop to h4, attacking his knight. And he surprised me a little bit with this move. I thought he would bring his other rook around. He moved his knight to g8. I went f5. I figured, let's go, let's go. I've got a bishop-queen battery here. If he takes, I take. I've got some play here. My knight's on this side of the board. My bishop. It looks pretty good for kingside attack. His queen is being blocked off by this pawn, and his other rook is basically out of the fence, at least temporarily. He went g5. And I thought about this for quite a while on what to do. As we all know, pawn takes bishop doesn't win a piece, because when pawn takes rook check, allowing him to take my bishop later. Which might have been the smarter move, doubling up his pawns. But I didn't want to open up this file, at least for now. I thought to myself, well, you know what, let's do this. I played bishop takes g5. Now, I'm taking away one of his defending pawns. Now, if you see now, I have 1, 2, 3 pawns here against his one pawn. I get a pawn storm and get some pieces in. I've got a pretty good game here. He played pawn takes the bishop. I played pawn takes bishop. He played rook takes check, and I retook. And he went knight to h6. Now basically my pawn here is doomed. So I'm not even going to bother trying to save him. I probably could have moved queen here, or I could have done some things. I just left him. He's basically doomed. And I went b4. I wanted to, in case I have to move my queen or my bishop, I didn't want this pawn hanging, and I wanted to push him back a little bit on the queen side. He played rook to e8 to go right after the pawn. And I went knight to g3. Well, of course, I'm hoping he's going to move something else. I moved knight here, knight takes, pawn takes, but it's not going to happen, of course. But one can always hope. He played rook takes e6, and I went knight to f5 anyway. He went rook f6. I played knight takes knight. Now there might be some people wondering why I didn't play knight takes bishop. What I was thinking at the time was all of his center pawns here are on dark squares. And they're locked in, he can't move them. I thought that would definitely stop the mobility of his dark squared bishop. That's why I took the knight. He played rook takes rook check. I played king takes rook. And he played bishop takes h6. Now at this point in the game, I'm looking here, and I'm on the 4th board. And I looked over to my left at my 3 teammates, how their games were doing, and I must have been so engrossed in my game I didn't even notice all 3 of the boards are empty. All the people were gone. The games were all over, and I went, oh boy, I wonder what happened. So I got up, and I asked the team captain, John Cardinelli. He's the long-time expert here in Binghamton, New York. Good guy, too. He was the captain. I said, well, John, what happened? And he says, well, all the games drew. I'm like, oh, boy. If I draw, we had a chance to tie for first place. If I lose, of course, we don't have a shot. I have to win this game. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. Opposite color bishops, queen pawn ending, almost the most complicated ending you can have. I'm like, great, here we go. So I said, you know what, let's toughen up and let's do our best. So I went queen to f3. He went queen to c7. Now as you're going to see, tempo is everything in this game. I checked him right away. Queen checks. King to g7. There was a couple of moves I could have made, but I think the best move I could have made was bishop to b3. What that does is 2 different things. It guards the c-pawn, and it also has this light squared bishop coming right down in his king position with my queen. It's just brutal for him. He's going to have a hard time. He's going to take 2 or 3 tempos to try to get rid of this queen. He went b6, which I was a little surprised at, but he probably thought, I don't know what else to do. He can't move his bishop, he can't move this pawn. The king basically can't move. So I guess that was the only move he had. I went king to e2. I was worried about later, as some exchanges happen here, the queen getting down in here, and I wanted to get the king over a little bit. He went a5. Now this is a position here I thought about for quite a while. Quite a while, actually. And I thought to myself, well, you got a majority on this side with pawns. Your queen's right here. Your bishop's bearing down in his position. What I decided to do was I went h4. I figure one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to push, which I'll take check, which you can't do, or he'll take here. He can't leave it because pawn takes traps his bishop. His king cannot move because even if he moves here, this discovered check would be brutal on his position. So he immediately took. He didn't give it much thought. I was a little surprised he didn't think about it more. I went queen and g4 check. My poor bishop there is leaning. He went king h7. And this I gave a lot of thought to. I thought to myself, oh boy, this is great. He does have some threats later if this file opens up. He brings his queen down here. His bishop is also bearing down on my position. I have to be careful not to get a pawn check later and a queen check to get me out in the open. I have to be careful. And I thought, well, look at my bishop, which by the way is doing incredibly good job. Not only is he bearing down this diagonal around the king, he's also guarding, you'll see later, this key c2 square from check. And as you'll see later, plays a huge role. This light squared bishop is a monster. I went c5. Now we all see the threat, of course. The threat is queen here mate. He went bishop to g7 to block my queen. Now this is where I start to, I'll say, mentally lose it a little bit. I called my original video, and I'll call this one as well, Can't See the Forest for the Trees. Sometimes it's really odd in human nature that when you're winning and you know you're winning, it's the most difficult time. I know it is for me, and I consider myself an average chess player, so I'm sure the other 99% of players out there that are average. Winning at one game sometimes is not easy, and you'll see a couple of moves here. Now, my other video has the computer on the bottom running off the moves and the points. I had not realized sitting there that I was way ahead on score. I believe it was like 3 or 4 points. You don't have the luxury of having a little computer there with you playing. You have to play over the board, not on a computer. And it was the third day, the last round. We had a 5 or 6 hour drive going back to here in upstate New York from New Jersey. And I was tired, but I really wanted to win for my team and also for myself. So he went bishop to g7. I took queen takes pawn check. I should have gone check here, but I didn't. And I thought it didn't make any difference, but ended up temporarily just, I couldn't figure it out. He blocked with a bishop, and I went back queen to g4, threatening mate again, and of course he moved the bishop back. Excuse me. Now him being a very excuse me, higher rated player than myself, I'm sure he saw all these combinations that I didn't see. So I got a little frustrated, and I went queen to h5. I'm figuring there's no way I can lose this game. This queen is doing somewhat of a job, but it's pretty much cut off. And he went bishop h6. Now, what I should have done and didn't see, and you'll see it in my other video with the computer screen, I should have went bishop here, f7. There is no way he can guard this square. He cannot guard it. I'm going to go queen here next. He's going to go in the corner. They'll have to take the bishop, sacrifice his queen, I take it, I win the game. I'll be honest with you, I just didn't see it. Sometimes you get so focused on a certain area. My queen has to set up a mating attack. My queen has to set up a mating attack. But you don't realize that one of your most important pieces that's bearing down his position is your bishop. I didn't see it. I went queen to e8. I'm figuring, okay, I'm going to meet him here. Bishop, queen. He can't escape. He went bishop to g7. I went back queen to h5. Now I'm starting to get aggravated. And when you get aggravated, of course, you make bad decisions. And I couldn't figure out how to finish this guy off. I knew it was there. You can sense it was there. I knew it was there. He probably knew it was there. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? He went bishop back to h6. And I went back to queen to f5 check. And he moved back king to g7. Now I am so frustrated at this point that I got up. I had a few minutes on my clock. I used to be a smoker. I'm not anymore. I went outside, get some cold air on myself. I was talking to the team captain, John Cardinelli. And of course, you can't discuss the game. It's against the rules. But he said, John, you just need to calm down. Take a deep breath. Just calm down and go back to the board. So I took a few minutes, and it was fairly cold out, second, third week in February in New Jersey. And I cooled off a little bit, and I came back to the board, and I sat down, and I probably sat down, I had a little bit of time on my clock, so I had some time to waste. And we were on move, we were way past the 40th move, we were on move 44 at this point. And then I saw it. And I remember sitting there and I smiled and I mumbled to myself softly. I didn't mean to do it, but I was so engrossed into the game. I went, oh my God, there it is. And I said it fairly softly. My opponent looked up, and I can tell he wasn't happy. He's not sure what move I saw. There's several moves that win. The one I saw was C takes B, attacking his queen. His queen cannot capture. If queen takes, queen checks, king here, queen mates. He's doomed. If he moves the queen anywhere else, say over here, queen takes, he loses the queen. So he has to come here. If he goes there, I play pawn takes with his queen here. He's doomed. There's nothing he can do. In fact, the next move, I'm going to sacrifice my bishop and play queen check, take, king takes, and just push the pawn up. As I did before, I took his knight instead of his bishop. His dark square pawns are hemming in his bishop. His bishop can't come and save this pawn from queening. And I tell you what, it's funny. I mentioned on the, and the only thing I wanted to mention is, here's my light squared bishop again, guarding this key square. Because now he can't come and check me and harass my king really badly and try to get some counterplay. Because with this pawn here and this bishop bearing down, I was in a lot of trouble. But this piece right here is worth more than a rook right now, because of the attacking and the huge defending of the C2 pawn, or C2 square. Absolutely amazing. When I moved my bishop back to D1 earlier in the game, my intuition told me to save him. I couldn't see in the future, of course, but sometimes you make the right choice. And I got to tell you honestly, I was so happy. What happened was we tied for first place in our section. We ended up losing on tie breaks, but I was absolutely jumping up and down outside, and for some reason I wasn't tired anymore. It's funny when you get excited. And you know, I mentioned in my other video, I thought of it after when I did the other video on this game about the U.S. Olympic team in the 1980 Americans versus the Russians in Olympic hockey. And I remember the movie and the speech that the coach gave in the locker room, and he said, you know, we can play these guys 10 times. And they'll beat us 9 times. But not today. Not today. And that's how I felt after when I thought about it. I'm pretty proud of this game. I'm sure there's a ton of mistakes in here if you went through the computer or even analyzed it without one. It's not Grandmaster chess, but we're not Grandmasters. We just love to play. And we try to play to our maximum potential. Now your maximum potential might be a low-rated player, or it might be up here. Maximum is maximum. And you try to do the very best you can every time, and that day was my day. And I was pretty happy, and I'm still proud of this game. I'm still proud that I took the time to cool off, open up my mind a little bit, or clear my mind, and see this position. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe. Any comments, please leave comments if you would like. Even if they're negative, that's okay. You know, it's a free, most of the world is free. You can almost do whatever you want and say whatever you want. And I want you to remember this. If you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye, folks. Take care.